If you're ready to unlock more better days, to take control of your health, to push past your limits and unleash your full potential, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Bettel. For over 2 decades, I've worked with elite athletes and high performers, helping them optimize their bodies, strengthen their minds, and recover from setbacks. Now I'm bringing that expertise to you through the Vitality Collective podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the science, strategies, and real-world solutions you can apply right away. Whether it's enhancing your physical performance, avoiding or recovering from injury, sharpening your mental edge, or simply feeling your best every single day. With insights from top experts and thought leaders, this podcast is designed to help you take action, feel better, and live the life that you deserve. Welcome to the Vitality Collective podcast, where every day is vital. Today I'm joined by Dr. Michael MacPherson, a researcher and practitioner known for pushing blood flow restriction training well beyond the rehab setting and into everyday performance and longevity training. In this episode, we talk about the real biology behind why BFR works, why it produces the same hormonal response as heavy lifting at a fraction of the load, and how to start using it no matter where you are in your training. If you've been looking for ways to enhance your training or recovery or rehab from an injury, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. Today, I am excited for this conversation with Dr. Michael MacPherson. We're going to talk about BFR, which is blood flow restriction training. Now, this is something that we were just talking about, Mike, and I think it's a really well-kept secret. And we used it in sport a ton. And what really caught my eye about the work that you're doing was seeing the content you're putting up on LinkedIn, really practically guiding through what this is and how people can use it. And that the creativity that you show in how you use this outside of where I've seen other practitioners in a very structured, very regimented, borderline dogmatic way of it has to be done like this. And so I really want to dive into that today. So thanks so much for coming on, and we're going to have a lot of fun today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'll scream BFR from the mountaintops as long as you'll let me. I want everyone to know, adolescents through elderly, we can help a lot of people with this modality.
That's really the exciting thing about this, isn't it? And your background in particular, you've been in the strength environment, you've been in rehab settings, you've even been in the operating room. And so you've seen it in a lot of different places. Based on that experience, what do you think people misunderstand about BFR?
I think just the name about it, blood flow restriction.
Yeah.
We got to think, I don't know what it is. And now we got so much literature base behind it. I think it's just kind of stuck. But if we could just get a little less scary name, right? You hear blood flow restriction, we're restricting blood flow. And then immediately, and rightfully so, it sends up a lot of red flags. And really what initially gave me a lot of comfort starting off, as you mentioned before, my time in the operating room might be in ACL reconstructions.
Yeah.
And the gold standard tourniquet time, at the time was 2 hours. And now it's, I think tourniquet.com or tourniquet.org has it listed as 90 minutes. That's full occlusion. And I was like, so if we're hitting 100% LOP for, like a lot of our pro athletes are doing recovery, and they're going anywhere between 70 to 100% LOP, 5 minutes on.
What's LOP?
So great question. Limit occlusion pressure, LOP, is the minimum pressure needed to fully occlude blood flow.
Right.
What we typically see with our BFR devices, our pneumatic ones, is they're going to inflate, like Airband, Saga. There's a sensor in the pump, and it's going to inflate, and it's feeling for that arterial pulse.
Okay.
And just like a blood pressure cuff, right? When I was a kid, I used to run into, I'm in Michigan, so we got Kroger's, Rite Aid, CVS, and they all had blood pressure. You'd sit down, shove your arm in it, and it'd inflate on. I'd be doing all that as a kid. Same technology in essence. So it's going to inflate. It's feeling that arterial pulse. And when it no longer detects that as it's inflating, it marks that pressure. This is the millimeters of mercury, maybe it's 230. And that's what we call 100% LOP. So from there on out, typically when you're performing BFR in a rehab setting, we're backing away. So if 100's here, we're typically using anywhere from, depending on my older adults, we might get all the way down to 30, even 20%, if you can believe that, just getting them familiar with the condition. And then in the rehab setting, some people take you all the way up to 80. But with our pro athletes, typically IPC, the ischemic preconditioning, which is recovery beforehand, or the PEIC, the post-exercise ischemic conditioning, which is like post-recovery. They'll take you to 100%, right? So 100% occlusion for 5 minutes. They'll rest for 5 minutes, and they'll repeat that cycle 3 times. People will be like, "Oh my God, 100% LOP." It's like that ACL reconstruction, that total knee. We were occluded for much longer than what you're doing now, and that's a surgical tourniquet too. So at the end of the day, there's nothing coming into that joint when that tourniquet's out. I remember seeing that, and it's one of the coolest experiences ever, being in surgery, and really standing behind that surgeon and seeing inside that joint space. And once they take that tourniquet off, and you just see that rush, boom, it's red now.
Right. That's absolutely fascinating. So, okay, so we've got the tourniquet, and we apply this to the limb, arms, legs, either one. Talk me through what exactly. So we go up to 80% occlusion on a limb. What exactly is that? What is happening within the limb once we inflate to 80%?
Yeah, absolutely. So three mechanisms are going to be our biggest drivers when it comes to the adaptations, the positive benefits of BFR. Yeah. So our 3 mechanisms are hypoxia, which just reducing oxygen, right? So we're dropping oxygen. Metabolic stress, which is the buildup of metabolites, because we're still contracting muscles. So we're still basically, gas is still in the system. We're burning things off. We get that exhaust. Those are our metabolites if we were a car. Yeah. And then mechanical stress, or that pulling of blood, which BFR, if you've ever had that cuff on, it creates that artificial pump as if you were exercising.
Yeah.
So that cuff goes on and inflates to 80% LOP. So we're basically, what that means is 20% of the normal blood flow is coming into that limb. Right. We're not allowing, and so we've allowed, and that's arterial inflow. So at 80% LOP, 20% of that arterial blood is coming into the limb still. So it's just reducing the amount of gas or oxygen available. Yeah. We're preventing all blood from escaping, right? Because our venous structure is a little more superficial. But what's happening? So firstly, I love to talk about this because it's really like, once you give people the tools, it's like, oh, now I know how to use them. That's the biggest thing with our education, making them confident, feel confident, and then here are your tools. So hypoxia does amazing things. Believe it or not, right? Short-term, acute hypoxia.
Right. Yeah.
But oxygen is very important to us, right? We don't have oxygen, we're not here for very long. So your body, it knows, believe it or not, right? Like, we've developed all these technologies to measure oxygen. We have some very similar systems within us, hypoxia-inducible factors that are monitoring normal oxygen levels, normoxia, or when that oxygen dips, the body turns on what are called hypoxia-inducible factors, which are HIFs. What HIFs do, they're really considered a master regulator within the human body. So just from hypoxia, when that first mechanism, we reduce oxygen to that limb, boom, those hypoxia-inducible factors get turned on. And basically what they're doing is they start turning the knobs and they start turning other genes on that improve really survival. And some of the things that hypoxia-inducible factors turn on are things like growth hormone, which is going to enhance healing, growth, recovery. Vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, which is, it increases angiogenesis, or the growth of new blood vessels. And then that hypoxia-inducible factors, as they increase, it's also going to increase brain-derived neurotropic factor, which, believe it or not, is a neuroprotective protein, which is, in studies, it's finding it supports longevity, learning, memory, and just overall protecting, right, those neurons. And that right there is just hypoxia. And the same, right, that's just one thing. And then that same, when the hypoxia is occurring in that same breath, you have heat shock proteins that are activated. And you hear a lot about those saunas, right? Heat shock proteins in saunas. BFR activates them, and they're what you would call a longevity protein. And the way I really like to describe them is they're the contractors of the human body. So one of the central dogmas of biology is that structure dictates function. So the structure of a protein dictates the way that protein works. When heat shock proteins are turned on, basically what they're doing is they got the blueprint of what that protein looks like.
Yeah.
They're checking it, right? They're the proofreader. And if they don't like the way it looks, they're either one, they're going to repair it, or two, they're going to destroy it. Simple as that. And so they're finding that these heat shock proteins are protective against neurodegradation, right? We're talking Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, these neurodegenerative disorders. Heat shock proteins, longevity proteins can be very beneficial with those things. And right, that's just, we're not even talking about what you typically hear about metabolic stress and mechanical stress. That's changing oxygen levels. And then all these knobs are turned. It's like we're escalating all these systems because we need to survive.
Yeah. And that's really the chemistry of how the adaptations are going to occur, right? We need that chemical change in order for the adaptation to happen to the muscles or the bone that we're actually trying to impact.
Absolutely, right? We need a stimulus and we need a response. And all those chemicals are creating the stimulus, right? BFR creates the one stimulus, the response is the chemicals, which then step.
So it really augments over and above the normal stimulus you would get, because we'll see that stimulus with regular lifting.
Yes.
But it just gives us that extra little bump to give us that additional benefit.
Yeah, with much less muscle damage, right? So if we're going to get that same stimulus with lifting, typically you're going to see 70 to 90% of your 1 rep max, sets of 1 to 6. Like, it's going to be very intense. It's going to be heavy load, traditional resistance training, what we're seeing in the weight room with, our higher level athletes. But you get, right? At the end of the day, I think strength is never a weakness and weakness is never a strength.
Yeah.
So if we can get people strong, right, we're going to maintain joint structures. We're going to maintain longevity, independence. And so everyone should be lifting, but the problem is not everyone can lift heavy. So then they can't they can't get strong. And that's where BFR comes in. It's like, hey, let's put these, you need to get strong, right? We're tight, we're uncomfortable, we have mobility issues, restrictions. We need to get strong, but I can't lift heavy because, right, progressive overload. I'm here, but I need to be here. Well, BFR can bridge that gap.
Yeah, exactly right. It's interesting, isn't it? Because, and I do want to go back to the mechanical stress piece and the others. But we used it with the professional teams in so many different environments. We used the recovery protocols to get that chemical milieu without having to necessarily put more wear and tear on the body. We used it with athletes who were veteran athletes. The other space is rehab. And that's where I'm using it today with general population. Just had a gentleman have spine surgery. Well, 3 days later, we've got the cuffs on his legs doing that recovery protocol. We're just helping those processes heal. We get him back into a squat pattern weeks ahead of when he would be in a typical rehab, be able to do a squat pattern, because we can actually start at quite a high level with some lower level squats and start getting those structures conditioned. So I find that fascinating is the bridging the gap for the individual who can't necessarily load their body as they previously would have been able to.
Absolutely. And I think you made a really good point, right? As you get older, especially older athletes, whether it's a download week, a tape week, or just in season, the grind, it's a great way to stay strong, stay healthy, keep moving, but bring that workload way down, but still get those adaptations, still maintain that strength.
Yeah. So let's dig back into some of those mechanisms then about what's going on behind the scenes then to allow that to happen. Because I was describing it to this gentleman. It was the first time he had ever seen anything to do with it. He didn't have any idea what we were about to do, why we were doing it. So really had to educate him.
Yeah.
Why is it that throwing these bands around your legs and doing a set of 30 squats body weight is the same as doing a 3-rep max, for example?
At the end of the day, right, when we're training, the body's it doesn't know whether you're squatting 315 or 135.
Yeah.
It knows what's going on within the body, the monitoring systems, what we're going to talk about now, right? The mechanical stress, the metabolism, those types of things. It's measuring those. So the typical route to take it, right? The typical map is we're going to slowly increase load, decrease reps. We're able to basically recruit the type 2 muscle fiber, right? So the Henneman size principle, right? So we start off with, and just for everyone, the type 1, type 2 muscle fibers, we'll keep it super simple, right?
Yeah.
Type 1 are going to be our smaller muscle fibers that are recruited earlier, typically with low load training. Type 2 muscle fibers, which are the muscle fibers that grow more readily, those muscles are going to be recruited. They're only called upon when needed, and that's when intensity is high and the load is heavy. And so your body, right, won't use those until you give it a reason to use them. That's where BFR comes in, because once again we change oxygen. We're going to increase mechanical and metabolic stress, and we'll get into those two things next. But because we change those things, basically we hijack that whole principle, and it's super cliche, biohacking. You hear it all the time now, right? But it really is with BFR, because you're able to basically, because you type 1 muscle fibers need oxygen, and because we've just reduced oxygen, we don't need your help anymore. We can't include you in this. So the body, right, where typically it's never going to get, especially with our older population, it's never going to get to those type 2 muscle fibers because they're not reaching those loads of those intensities. It immediately brings those into view, and it's like, no, we have to use these. And really, that's where we see great improvements with mobility. When we're able to call upon those type 2 muscle fibers, it's enhancing posture. You're feeling better. You're moving better. Those type 2 muscle fibers, the way I frame it, and I think is absolutely true. You catch your foot on a step on the ground or whatever it is, that when you catch yourself, that's a type 2 muscle fiber contraction, right? That's how you prevent a fall. So if you're never training these fibers, right, you're in a bad spot if you ever need to use those things. So, right, prepare yourself. But mechanical stress, right? So that cuff's on, and it's preventing all that blood from escaping that limb. What happens is that blood begins to pool, and we call it cellular swelling, right? You hear about it. And what happens is it's got to go somewhere. The fluid's got to go somewhere. So it starts pushing into the muscle cells, and it starts to stretch them, and it's stretching them. And what happens is that actually the cell membrane communicates to the nucleus, and again, there's a stimulus and response. It lets the nucleus know, like, hey, I'm under duress, right? Stress, when it's acute, is a very positive thing for us. When it's chronic, it becomes detrimental. But that acute stress, those cell membranes are getting stretched, and they signal the nucleus, we need help. We're getting stretched. We're under a significant amount of stress, and in response, the nucleus upregulates muscle protein synthesis, boosts growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor, testosterone, right? That mTOR pathway gets activated. Basically, we're just going to give the membrane what it needs so it can accommodate that extra fluid, that blood flow. And that's really the pump you get when you lift heavy. It's the same concept, that we're just creating it with a biohack. In that same breath, which adds the mechanical stress, is metabolic stress. So what's happening? Again, I was a biology teacher for many years, so passionate about it. Absolutely love this subject. But, right, ATP, glucose, all of those things, right? It's the currency of life, what we're breaking down, what we're using. Every time ATP is what's driving every muscular contraction, as you know. And every time an ATP molecule is used, one of those, right? So it's ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to keep it simple, muscular contraction happens. We cut off a phosphate, it becomes adenosine triphosphate, and then that phosphate's free floating. It's a metabolite. It's basically like exhaust. As we're preventing all of that blood from escaping, phosphates are building up, reactive oxygen species, hydrogen ions, and lactate. It's all building up within that limb, and it's localized. And it just continues to build up this metabolic stress. And that also adds to increases in growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor, testosterone. And then the greatest thing happens in my mind with BFR that not enough people know about. When that cuff comes off and that oxygen-rich, ATP, glucose-rich blood rushes into that limb, one, that rush of blood into the limb causes an additional mechanical stress, a shear stress, which increases nitric oxide production. So vasodilator, the blood vessels they're accommodating more flow now. And now all of those metabolites are flowing throughout our entire system. Now we're talking systemic adaptations to BFR. And that's what really drives where you start to get into the research where it's the contralateral, the effects proximal cuff, the rotator cuff, the pecs, the traps, the rhomboids. As long as we start right, I might not be occluded, right? If I got an upper body cuff on, I'm not occluded here, but I am changing the way blood is flowing back through the system, which once again still stimulates positive adaptation. So there is a number of studies that support the proximal benefit of blood flow restriction.
Yeah, that's why we started using it 3 days after my guy's spine surgery. It is not necessarily to get his legs stronger. It's to actually help the spine heal. It was to help all of those structures that had been cut, and you go in laterally during this surgery. And so he was like, why is my back hurting all the way across to my side? So I literally had to put my finger on his back and said, they went in here and cut every structure all the way through to your spine here. Wow. So that's a long way to go, right? That's why your back's hurting. So we got to heal all of that. And he's like, I feel like it's weak. It's not attached. I'm like, yeah, that's what that means.
Yeah. Wow.
So we used it to promote that healing systemically, not just because his quad had atrophied from the loss of neural drive during his actual injury. So yeah, it really is powerful systemically. And I think that's an underrated part of it.
Absolutely. And honestly, seeing it was believing for myself. I had actually in 2018, so for 3 years I was teaching and I was going to see our athletic trainer after school, right? The kids are in the training room and here's coach in the training room. Yeah. And you got I was doing all the, had a hip shift. So we were resetting the hips, SI joint inflammation. Well, I ended up, my wife was pregnant with our son in 2018. I blacked out. I fell down our basement stairs. I ended up going to the emergency room and my disc between L4, L5, S1 herniation. And I was like, well, why did I fall down the stairs? He's like, why? My hypothesis is basically the pain, right? Overloaded the system and blacked you right out. And I was like, well, that's intense. But make a long story short, I added in BFR cycling actually. And when I was cycling, my first time, I cycled at 60% LOP, 15 minutes, and just a low to moderate pace, not even fast. But I took the cuffs off, and it gives me goosebumps to talk about it. It's the most amazing thing I've ever felt. It rushed through I could feel it up the top of my hamstrings, through my glutes, right into my lumbar spine. It was almost like this relaxation of everything. And I was like, whoa, this is the real deal. Like this is 100, we found something here. And that was the only thing that allowed me to get that audition, right? Like to finally relieve my low back tightness.
Yeah. That's an amazing use there. Like the cardiovascular element, I haven't used it a ton with cardiovascular training. And it's interesting. One of the reasons we use it for lifting was around the muscle damage piece. Mm-hmm. Now, for those listening, when we're lifting weights, we're actually trying to damage the muscle so that it can be built back stronger. And if we do that consistently, we damage, we recover, we damage, we recover. Over time, we get this adaptation. There was less soreness associated once we were used to it. Mm-hmm. We were pretty sore when we first started using BFR. But once we were used to it, there was actually less soreness associated with it locally. What's the mechanism there in having less soreness? Is it less muscle damage, or is it more of the recovery factor?
I guess you would kind of say both, really. So creatine kinase and markers of muscle damage are much now granted. If you're going to do 75 reps of everything you're out there doing at 80% LOP, there might be some DOMs involved here, but we've kind of definitely gone away from that. And what I'm doing with a lot of people, 3 sets of 15, we're having a lot of with bilateral exercise, and you start getting to unilateral, and even that changes. But because that cuff is on, we're able to stimulate the same pump, right? Maybe you're three sets of 5 at 315 is your back squat.
Yeah.
And with BFR, we can get that same stimulus with 185 for 3 sets of 5. But what we're doing now, it's way less damage. There's way less of that contractile damage, but we're still getting the same healing response.
Yeah.
Well, where the body is, right? So maybe we're damages here and we're upregulating healing just a hair when we're doing heavy load resistance training with BFR, right? So I get that same positive adaptation, but my damage is way low. And that's what a lot of the studies show, that these markers of muscle damage we're getting. And I actually just posted on LinkedIn today, right? Testosterone, growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor, very similar. No statistically significant difference between, in this study, low load resistance training with BFR and high load resistance training. But one of the major differences was the markers of muscle damage were lower with BFR.
Yeah. So with less damage leading to less soreness, meaning you can train with more frequency with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, right, we see more people now in the pro sports world. I'm talking with like microdosing. Movement is medicine. So it might be a little something here, pick back up, right? We're getting ready for a trip. We're going to do a BFR walk before we take flight or hop on the bus or the coach. And then we're going to get, 15, 20 minutes of some sort of BFR mobility or small strength training session with no load or low load after. And absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, all these different ways that you're using it. And I'd love to, define for people when they should be thinking about or could be thinking about using this. Because we've seen it used very widely in rehab.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really where it's proliferated with the guys at Owens Recovery Science, and it really comes through that rehab lens.
Yep.
But I just think there's much more scope for that, for the use of BFR out into training, into conditioning, all these different elements. So I'm interested now then to zoom into what are the indications for using this in real plain terms for people.
Yeah. Well, so one, the contraindications for BFR, right? So who do we want to avoid or seek additional guidance? Because studies get released, people, again, they start thinking outside the box. We can explore something safely. And we've seen some of these contraindications come off a list, right? Like type 2 diabetes was initially a contraindication for BFR. And now that it's some peer-reviewed literature has come out, it's actually recommended. And they're finding that it's allowing us to get more glucose out of the blood, because that the occlusion basically is wringing out the muscle because it's a metabolite-rich blood, right? So it's wringing out all the gas. And then when that reperfusive blood, which is glucose-rich, comes in, the muscles are like that sponge.
Yeah.
Suck that additional sugar out. Huge benefit. And right now, dealing with the muscle wasting, the sarcopenia that type 2 diabetics fight or deal.
Sure. Yeah.
We got that twofold now. But initially, DVTs, if there's been a previous DVT, avoid it. I speak with the physician. A previous stroke, and stroke is real. Both of them are real interesting because there are studies out there where, like, I was at a hospital giving an in-service, and at the end of the in-service, one person raised their hand. She's like, I just did BFR with a stroke patient yesterday. And I was like, oh, it's okay. I was like, you consult with the physician. However, there are studies out there that are there's positive benefits. And she showed me, and that's where she got it. We had read the same study. I was like, that's something that I would seek further, little more attention on another perspective. But previous DVT, previous stroke, excessively high blood pressure, if it's not regulated over 140, if there's any genetic clotting abnormalities, definitely something. Now, they're finding that BFR, once we're done with the session, actually lower blood pressure. So a very positive effect on BFR. And then it's kind of mixed when you get into like lymphedema or the swelling. Consult with a physician. A lot of people have had success using very low pressures. I wouldn't go with very high pressures with someone with those kind of fluid retention issues. But you speak with the physician and we're able to use lower pressures. That would be positive.
Right.
So those are the things you would avoid before going to BFR. Once we're going, I want to know what your goal is. And then once you tell me your goal, we're going to develop that roadmap on how to get there. Initially, right, so you're spot on. BFR started as a rehab, and that's what you're going to see. The majority of the literature is going to be rehab modality. And you're going to see 80% LOP. You're going to see the 75 rep protocol, or that 30, 15, 15, 15. To me, as a strength guy, that's the equivalent as, hey, you're doing 3 sets of 10 of everything all the time, no matter what your life. I don't care how long you've been training. And that just, it rubs me the wrong way. It's like, no, it's just, I don't like to see it. We got to meet where they are, because the BFR it's compounding the benefits. The more we do it, the better the response gets. So my thing is, I want to, right? Like I like to fish. I want to set the hook, start low, I want to explain to you the benefits of it, that right. It's going to be this LOP initially when we're finding this limb occlusion pressure. It's probably going to be uncomfortable, just like you're getting your blood pressure taken. However, right, so I'm not talking my elite athletes here, because they're elite athletes, because they're used to that buildup, that burning sensation from pushing their bodies. They deal with occlusion much better than Gen Pop, right?
Right.
I guess back up 3 things I asked someone. Have you ever been in a consistent strength and conditioning program? Are you used to training? Have you ever done BFR before? And if they're no, I know I'm starting with a low pressure. If they have less muscle mass and they're a little bit leaner, we're going to start with the low pressure, because they're going to feel that pressure much more than some big, one of our elite athletes with a lot of quad mass and strength. When we get into that occlusion period, or we're getting that LOP, is just tell them it's going to get tight as this cuff inflates, right? It's measuring your pulse. But once it no longer detects that, we're going to take that snapshot. Pressure is going to release, and it's the highest it's ever going to go, right? At that point, we're always going to back up. And first out the gate, I like resting BFR or passive BFR. There's hundreds of, lots of different names. It's, to me, it's right. Recent, again, we'll come back to the rehab aspect of it, like ACLs, total knees, but going on, PTs, physios, 1 day out post-op, they'll go BFR on the contralateral side, or the BFR, the upper body, and run that passive cycles.
Exactly. Yeah. So just define the passive BFR.
So passive BFR, absolutely, we're not exercising.
You're laying on the therapy table. You just got the cuffs on, right?
You got it. Or even better, I'm sitting in front of the TV watching I'm binge watching my favorite show, movie, and just kick back and relax. And really, the pain mitigation happens within that session. And then also like improvements in mobility. Really see, once we start that occlusion, because we get that increased recruitment of type 2 muscle fibers, it seems to just grease those joints. And again, passive is just as it sounds, right? We're sitting typically on the couch, on the table, at home, or in the training room. And it's traditionally 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 3 cycles. On the upper body, it'll be 40 to 60%. Again, we can use lower if they're an older patient. And then on the lower body, typically with our elite athletes, 70 to 100. But if you can believe this, I've had 68-year-old. So one of my doctors I was working with, an MD, 68. He was 6'3", 260, just a solid gentleman. And he was using passive BFR at 30% LOP, 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off for 3 cycles. And I taught piriformis syndrome, no longer an issue for him, right? Like, he was completely honest with me. Like, I should be exercising. If I exercise, I'd be even better. He's like, but I no longer have issues going up the stairs. And all he was doing was sitting in his lazy boy, reclining and doing that.
I think that's such an important point. And you described this as biohacking. I actually think that this is one of the truest forms of biohacking. It's sort of come to mean like put some like weird, obscure molecule in your body that's going to do all this for you.
Yeah.
What I love about this is it just augments hard work, right?
Yeah.
Even though we're not lifting a ton of weight, this is the hardest thing you'll do, right? This is not going to feel comfortable. Like if you want to do this kind of biohacking, have at it. This is not your blue light blocking glasses, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's probably, to me, now that you say that, honestly, it's probably why I fell in love with it, because it's not a cheat. You still have to put in the effort. You still have to do it. You still have to be consistent. But yeah, you're using all your body's processes. There's nothing external, synthetic entering the system.
Yeah. And as far as rehab goes, the thing that surprised me most when I was learning about this and that we use it for was it's not just rehabbing a muscle injury. We're talking fractures, we're talking strains, we're talking all sorts of surgeries. Like, what are some of those things that we can rehab with BFR?
Yeah. So it's all on the table in my mind. It is worth giving it, right? Because the systemic benefits, we know that growth hormone, insulin, growth factor, testosterone, they heal muscle, they heal connective tissue. There's studies that support cartilage, ligaments, tendons. They're going to boost all of those effects, right? Bone metabolism, tendinopathy. So we're reducing inflammation. We have a lot of as you know, like a lot of our professional athletes, whether it's Achilles, patella tendonitis, we see the most of, they're using BFR. I've heard of teams even using BFR at halftime to get the athletes with real bad jumper's knee. We got to get them through the game. We're using BFR beforehand and after. I've used it FAI in the hip. So for more acetabular impingement after a hip scope, lateral ankle complex reconstructions, BFR, low back pain, the pelvic floor, right? Adding lower body BFR to pelvic floor, to me, it's a no-brainer, right? Any muscle that is giving us, or any structure that's giving us issue and not readily responding to I can't get to the intensity to get a response from that area.
Mm-hmm.
BFR, add it to it. Anything lower limb, like when it comes to below the knee, so that foot and ankle complex.
Yeah.
BFR does a phenomenal job of getting after the gastroc and the soleus, which are very hard muscles to really stimulate change in. Anything in the forearm, distal bicep and below, right? It's great for the rotator cuff, but it's hard to get You're doing wrist rollers for days. You add BFR to it, it changes the game for it. So I think those are very low hanging fruit, and the pelvic floor, especially, as you were saying, right, with your spinal patient. Huge benefit, a lower body, because it's going to give us a stronger boost in those anabolic hormones. But if it connects to the hips, anywhere from basically the navel down, I'm using lower body BFR for it and trying to get some sort of adaptation. If it's in between, I'm going to try upper body BFR. And I got to segue into this, a little off topic, but the pain mitigating effects, upper body BFR for any patient or person listening to this, if you're in a wheelchair, I've had multiple people, unprovoked, like, this is the only thing that gets rid of my head, neck, shoulder pain is upper body BFR. Yeah. At the most recent one at a sports medicine conference in Denver, and it was a physical therapist. He was wheelchair bound. He's like, they've given me this prescription, that prescription, you name it, just cupping, dry needling, modality after modality. He's like, this is the only thing that gets rid of my neck and shoulder pain. I was like, that, has to be consistent, but just a huge benefit.
That's outstanding. I personally use this for pain mitigation being more virtual now in what I do than when I was with the pro teams where you're up and about all the time. You start getting that real high hamstring pain from sitting a lot, and like a little bit of hip soreness. And that seemed like a really intuitive thing when I got my own BFR system to put that on to help with that, and just went through a protocol. I went through a passive protocol. And then I go through, I'll just stand and just do some hamstring curls,
Yeah.
right?
Awesome.
Just with the cuff and just the weight of my leg,
Yep.
and just little things like that have really personally helped me. I've had ACL reconstruction 20 years ago that was really poorly managed at the time. So I'll use it when my knee doesn't feel great. All of these things, I think, and more are coming to mind with my clients now. I'm getting ready to mail a load of these to my clients as you're describing these to me, because
Yep.
there are so many indications for it as you describe it. So let's move on from rehab and get into training, because the other thing that I think about this, like, what are the benefits we're going to see augmented by BFR? We still got to do the work, but we're going to see a little bit of a boosted. But then it's also, for me, the flexibility it gives you if you're pressed for time.
Yeah.
How do we get the biggest bang for our buck if we don't have much equipment? There's a lot of factors that can go into just regular training with this.
Yeah. We do a lot. I use it everywhere. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes before an exercise session, a training session, we'll do IPC just to kind of grease the joint, so to speak, depending on how we're feeling.
What's IPC again? Can you?
Yeah, the ischemic preconditioning. So just if someone, we're waiting on one session to finish and kind of hanging out, grab the cuffs, right? So portability and the cuff design really dictates what we can do when it comes to training wise, right? Like if you're tethered and you got a hose connected to a pump that's connected to a wall, you're going to be leg extension, knee flexion, knee extension. That'll be your bread and your butter, I guess. With the Saga, the Airbands cuffs that I utilize, really, it's my imagination. I've run a mile occluded, and it was at 50%. And if you can believe this, it was my hip flexors and my adductors that were just unbelievable. And it was, honestly, I had one of my better squat days when I ran there and got there. But during it, I got down my street and I was like, cool, all right, this is going to be like gut check time, Mike. Like, what do you got in the but we'll do IPC or ischemic preconditioning passively. So someone's there early, a group, put on the cuffs, 5 minutes, depending on how much time we have. So we might just go 5 minutes occlusion, 2 minutes off, 5 minutes occlusion, depending on what we have available, or just 1 5-minute session before exercise. And just, right, we're reducing oxygen. So we've just right out the gate enhanced type 2 muscle fiber recruitment. We're putting ourselves in a better position come later on in our training we don't have to do as many warm-up sets. We don't have to kind of wait to actively recruit all those type 2 muscle fibers. We're getting ahead of the game. We'll perform dynamic warm-ups with the cuffs on, anywhere from 40 to 100% LOP. Oh yeah, I'm a big believer that feet are our foundation. That's where everything starts, right? It's the one thing that's in constant contact with the ground. And so I believe a lot of dysfunction, a lot of movement dysfunction can start right at that foundation. So we go through and we start off with our BFR walks, right? Forward, back, around our toes, around our heels. We're rolling the ankles, doing a lot of different things. And then we're doing high knees, we're doing shuffles, karaoke, you name it, with blood flow restriction on. And it just, it truly enhances the whole experience. It's going to be challenging, no doubt, but you're going to feel so much better once you get into that weight room. Training wise, in a lot of new research and so we're implementing it. We might even do a little more moderate loads, 40 to 60% of the 1 rep max, with anywhere from 40 to 80% LOP, right? And so the idea is we're increasing the benefits. We're getting just enhanced recruitment. We're still not going as heavy, but we're enhancing the recruitment of those type 2 muscle fibers and just challenging them to a greater extent. So more of like, instead of low load to no load, more of like a moderate load training. Because I still am a believer in my mind, like heavy resistance training, heavy load training, no matter what, it just does it just activates the nervous system differently. It's the gold standard for a reason. But what can we do to play with that? Because you can't go heavy all the time, right? You just max effort's a max effort, and if it's a max effort, you're not doing that daily because that you just can't do. You run out of gas.
Right.
Some of the things we'll do in training, we'll squat heavy. We'll put the cuffs on the rest periods. So now we're occluding, right? So it might be a set of 3 or 5. So now in my mind, we're kind of like, we're smashing everything together because we're still getting that very high load stimulus. But now, during the rest period, we're occluding. So we're still getting all those anabolic hormones. We're still getting those positive adaptations during that rest period. At the end of the workout, what are we finishing with? Maybe we're not doing BFR, the compound exercises on this day, but we're finishing, maybe it's a try and a buy set, game day guns for some people, so to speak, or they're finishing with, some high rep hamstring is something I'm really into right now. Just thinking about when we're running hamstring contraction after hamstring contraction, why am I always going to train my hamstrings for maximum weight with low reps if I'm asking, right, just constantly sprinting and cycling that leg. So we'll do a lot of high rep hamstring with BFR.
Yeah.
And that has the effects for the glute and the low back. Phenomenal. Band leg curls with BFR. We do a lot of those band leg curls and band hip flexion. We do a lot of direct hip flexion work in hopes of targeting more of the psoas and some of those deep hip flexors with BFR, right? And you feel it. It just really changes the game. So we sprinkle it in. I mean, I could go on now. All over the place with training.
Yeah, and so we're going to see what benefits in muscle hypertrophy. So we're going to see gains in size that are enhanced. We're going to see strength gains that are enhanced. Maybe some coordination that's enhanced. Type 2 fiber recruitment that's enhanced here. What are the sort of percentages that we're dealing with here? So if I follow a traditional weight training program and you sprinkle in the BFR as you are, and let's say we adapt, we're similar in our genetic capacity to adapt. What advantages will the BFR training show over the regular weight training?
Can I draw you a picture?
Oh, I'd love you to.
Right? Yeah, awesome. Right? So very simple, right? So traditional, so times on the bottom on our X, and we're going to say hypertrophy is on our Y-axis, right? Real simple. Okay.
Yeah.
At about, and then this can range from 8 to 12 weeks. We'll just say at the 8-week mark, when it comes to hypertrophy with BFR, it's like rocketing. We're getting shot out of a cannon. It's happening it's happening quickly. Heavy load resistance training or typical hypertrophy cycles, it'll catch up, but it won't catch up to that 8 to 12 week mark. So especially if my mind initially goes to, maybe I'm a high school or a college coach and I got a freshman or someone or coming off an injury, but I need to hypertrophy. I need to put some muscle on their frame because I need to protect them against injury and I need them to produce more power, right? The whole idea, larger muscles are going to produce more force, more power. BFR should be, to me, a no-brainer, right? Let's put BFR on that young person so we get some hypertrophy. We kicked off that hypertrophy right now instead of waiting, right? Like this is an 8-week window where we can get ahead of our competition.
Yeah. And so for those who haven't tried it, this isn't the most pleasant feeling when you're training that you'll ever experience.
You're going to feel that burn.
A deep burn, and it doesn't get better during the rest periods. So it's pretty excruciating. So I feel that there is a need, as you alluded to start lower.
Yeah.
Don't go right away to squats with 80% occlusion and do this 75 rep protocol. I think you're going to have to get used to it, and there's going to be an adaptation period to start with, right?
As with all things, absolutely, right? Walk before you run. Let's test the waters. Now, I will tell you, the body adapts very quickly to that pressure, that changing that pain perception or that pain input. like gentleman I was working with, we started him. He hates having his blood pressure taken. It's like a no-no. He'll avoid doesn't want anything to do with it. I was like, let's try this out. And he's like, no, that I do not like it. We started at 18% LOP, but just doing that one time, right? We inflated him. And sometimes I'll start people at, my goal is to get at 30. I'll take you to 40 and then back you down to 30. And it's a completely different feeling. It's like, wow, that's far more comfortable than that initial pressure you put on. So that the body does a lot of interesting things with it, but it adapts very readily. And again, that more we do BFR, the more we can slowly use that as one of our progressive overload principles. When I'm training someone, if I'm keeping reps, sets, exercises, and weights the same, I'll change the pressure, right? We'll increase the pressure. If we're a couple weeks in and, hey, I think we're doing pretty well at 40%, 50% LOP, we'll adjust. Maybe it's the reps, the sets. Maybe we'll even mess with the time, the rest periods a little bit while keeping that pressure constant. So a lot of, just same as traditional strength training, right? We're just manipulating variables to get the outputs we want.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want people to understand is that this isn't necessarily a do-it-yourself at-home thing where you just start tying rubber bands around your legs, right? These devices we're talking about are very precise in how they measure and prescribe. And you need an expert who knows how to manipulate these devices appropriately. So where can people find practitioners who have expertise in this area?
That's a great question. So a lot of even when I speak with physios and physical therapists, you'd be surprised how there's not as many using BFR especially when it comes to me, it's like gold standard for ACL. If there's an ACL reconstruction, total knee, and I'm seeking quad activation, I want a BFR right now. That's a very tough one, I would say, and I'm biased, right? Come find me on LinkedIn or social media. I have education I can help you with, or point you in the right direction with some of my networks who I know trusted. They're using BFR and they're doing it the right way. Like, as you said, what really got here, right? So it started in the 60s in Japan, and that's how early on it was bicycle tires, tubing. It was a Dr. Sato trying these experiments, and we still see it today. But even myself, right? So I'd say I'm pretty well versed with BFR. I've used quite a few different systems, and those small, if you can believe this, when the cuff's wider, right? So our 10 centimeter cuffs, we're going to be able to get that LOP at a lower pressure. But as soon as you making that cuff thinner, like a tubing or a 5 centimeter strap, that pressure's got to go through the roof to get that same level of occlusion. And it can cause, immediately bruising, which is unsightly, uncomfortable. When we're trying to get someone healthy and we're bruising them, that can cause some issue. But again, if you are just using tubes, how long are you occluding for? What are you occluding? What are the potentials, right? The impacts, the dangers that could be occurring with those things. You're absolutely spot on. Having a pneumatic device, something that measures and gives you that comfort, is absolutely vital.
Brilliant. Mike, we end every show with 3 takeaways that people could go away and start thinking about today. What would be your 3 for BFR training?
Oh my gosh. My 3, I would say, that is a good one. So using it, start low and just find a way to use it. Find a way that works for you. Find a way, meet your patient where they're at. If they're, let's dial in those lower pressures. So we're going to start passively, right? So I'm going to go BFR at home. And once I've got them believing in the benefits, so they notice, hey, my mobility is improving, I feel better, right? Because those are going to be very subjective. They're going to know that, feel that. Then we're going to go to some BFR walking. Get outside, go get some fresh air. Let's go on a BFR walk, 10 to 15 minutes, and then start to move them towards some resistance training.
I absolutely love it. Where can people find you? You mentioned LinkedIn. How can people find you, follow along with what you're doing, and get in touch with you?
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I'm So Michael MacPherson, PhD, it's saying it's MacPherson, PhD on LinkedIn. I post daily BFR articles, just breakdowns, reading the literature and trying to make it super simple. So practitioners can they don't have to do the thing. Just take it and go. You don't have to read the research, trying to simplify it for them. I'm on social media, clinical BFR, so Instagram, and I post what I'm doing. It might be myself, some of the people I'm working with, how I'm using BFR, different outside the box. Today, a video I'll be sharing later this week. I actually was doing some eccentric box squats with BFR, just do something different. That was, that was a burn. There's some discomfort there.
Yeah.
It felt good after the fact, really amazing. And then on YouTube, clinical BFR as well.
Okay. Well, this has been such rich information, from a biology lesson to just learning about this phenomenal modality, which, again, for me, in this world of biohacking and what it has become, of largely ineffective modalities that are highly profitable for the people selling them, but useless for the people buying them. This is one of the fundamentals for me, right? This augments the fundamentals. So I love that you are making this more accessible to people. I think you're doing a tremendous service for them. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for your time today. We've really enjoyed this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I could talk about this stuff all day, so apologize. I was a little long-winded there, but thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. That was such a fascinating conversation with Dr. Michael MacPherson. Here are the 3 key things that you can take away from today's episode. Number 1, start low and find a way to use BFR that works for where you are right now. Begin passively with lower pressures. Let your body adapt and feel the early benefits, like improved mobility and reduced tightness. Meeting yourself where you are is key to actually building this into your routine. Number 2, once you're comfortable with passive BFR, get outside and do a 10 to 15 minute BFR walk. This is one of the most accessible entry points to the modality. It requires no equipment beyond the cuffs, no gym, no heavy lifting, and it delivers real cardiovascular and muscular stimulus that compounds the longer you stay consistent. Number 3, progress towards resistance training with BFR by trending up gradually, adjusting the pressure, reps, sets, or rest periods over time, just like you would with any other training program. The benefits compound the more continuously you use it. So the goal isn't perfection on any one day. It's building a sustainable practice that keeps producing results. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the show is to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave a rating or a review, and share this with somebody that you think could benefit from this message. It makes a real difference in helping us reach more people who could benefit from these conversations. You can stay connected with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Vitality Collective Performance, where we share additional insights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates on upcoming episodes. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.